This is quiz 1. First problem is we're supposed to calculate the difference quotient f of x minus f of a over x minus a for the function f of x equals 1 over x. So if f of x is 1 over x, then f of x minus f of a over x minus a means, well, you write f of x, which is 1 over x, and then you write f of a, which is 1 over a. You just replace x by a to get 1 over a. Then you have to divide by x minus a. From here on, this is algebra, so you have to get a common denominator on top. The common denominator is x times a, and you have to multiply the first fraction by a, and the second fraction by x, and then you still have to divide by x minus a. So this is just getting a common denominator on the top. Then you have to treat the bottom part as a fraction. So you flip the bottom and multiply by it. So that's going to be a minus x over xa times 1 over x minus a. Now this is okay as an answer, but there is a simplification. You need to notice that this x minus a looks just like a minus x, except that the a minus x is in the other order. So you can flip the a minus x and make it x minus a if you stick a minus in front of that, because the negative of x minus a is a minus x. So the rest of that stuff stays. You got the xa here times 1 over x minus a. So that means that these two guys are going to cancel, and you're left with minus 1 over xa. And that is the answer. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 says to sketch a graph of sketch a graph of x minus 1 cubed by starting with the graph of x cubed. Well, this is the graph of x cubed. It's a third-degree polynomial, and it goes through 0, 0, and it grows like that. The domain is all real numbers. And if you take x minus 1 cubed, that just translates that picture 1 unit to the right. So the 0 point here moves 1 to the right, and everything else moves 1 unit to the right. So we have our vertex here, and then the graph is going to grow up from here and down from there. By the way, notice that it will cross the y-axis because x minus 1 cubed has a y value for every x, in particular when x is 0. If you just plug 0 in here, you get negative 1 cubed, which is where you are right there. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 has you compute the composition of two functions. So we have to compute f circle g of x, which always means, by definition, f of g of x. In this case, f of x is the square root function, square root of x, and g of x is a bit more complicated. It's the cube root of 1 minus x. So if you take f of g of x, that means take f of whatever this is, the cube root of 1 minus x. And then you have to ask yourself, what does f do to anything? And the answer is f takes the square root of whatever you plug in. Whatever you plug in, f takes the square root of it. Here I'm plugging in this mess, so f is going to take the square root of that mess. So you get the square root of the cube root of 1 minus x. And I would put this in exponential form. So this would be 1 minus x to the 1/3, and all of that is to the 1/2. Then there's the law of exponents that says when you have a number to a power to another power, you can multiply the exponents. So that's going to give us 1 minus x to the 1/6 power. And that's the composition of those two functions. The last part of the question asks, what's the domain? Well, the 6th root is kind of like the square root. You can't take the 6th root of a negative number. So what that means is that 1 minus x cannot be negative. Or in other words, 1 minus x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So you can add x to both sides and get 1 greater than or equal to x, or to read it the other way, x less than or equal to 1, which is a perfectly good answer for stating the domain. You could also state it as minus infinity all the way out to 1, including 1. 1 is included because you can take 1 minus 1, which is 0, to the 1/6 power. The 6th root of 0 is 0. Last part of the quiz asks you to do it in the other order. What is G circle F? Well, G circle F is a function, and what it does is it takes G of F of X. So once again, we do it by saying, well, what's F of X? What's the inner thing? F of X is the square root function. And now the harder part of the question, what does G do to anything? And you have to go up to the definition of G. G takes the cube root of 1 minus whatever you plug in. Whatever you plug in. So you have to take the cube root of 1 minus whatever you plugged in. And in this case, I plugged in the square root of X. Right? Now, I don't feel like turning this into exponents. We'll just leave it the way it is. But we need to ask the question, what's the domain? Well, in this case, the cube root is not a problem because I can take the cube root of anything. Cube root of a negative number is a negative number. Cube root of a positive number is a positive number. No problem. So the only thing that's a problem is that square root right in there. I can't take the square root of everything. So the only thing I can take the square root of is anything that's not negative. So x has to be bigger than or equal to 0. So that's what the domain is for this problem. Or in interval notation, that would be the interval starting at 0 and going out to infinity. And that's it for quiz 1.